Just a few weeks ago, the NFL gave us some promising news. Our boy Darren Woodson is back at it again.
It's a dream come true to be a finalist. It always has been, and I will forever be grateful to be in this position. But it's not so much for me. It's just, I guess when I look at the position we're in right now, it's just a recognition of some of the guys that I played with on the defense side of the ball that never got credit. I represent the Tony Toberts, the Ken Nortons, the James Washingtons, the Thomas Everetts. I mean, Larry Brown, so many guys, Kevin Smith, so many guys that just never got that attention because we were always the three amigos heavy, right? It was Troy, Emmett, and Mike.
We feel the same way with the offensive line.
And then sometimes you're like, did they play defense too?
Yeah.
Like they played offense and defense because we didn't play defense evidently back in those days. So that's what I'm representing, man. I'm representing those guys.
Anyone who watched the Cowboys in the 90s knows how vital Woodson was to those teams. In this video, I will argue why he deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame, using statistics and also some points you've likely never heard before. If any Hall of Fame voter watches this video and still believes he doesn't deserve the honor, then with all due respect, you're a closed-minded skeptic when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. In my opinion, the 1992 Dallas defense was one of the most underrated units in football history. Johnson and Wanstead's system caught the league by fire. Wanstead played what you called a one-gap scheme. Defensive linemen were responsible for their lanes. Smaller speed guys, who were D linemen, were oftentimes a choice of preference. The same with linebackers. Johnson and Wanstead didn't care how small a linebacker was, as long as they had speed and were aggressive pursuing the ball.
They swarm to the ball so incredibly. This speed-burning defense, #1 in the NFL.
Dallas had the smallest front seven in football. Wanstead wanted small athletes who could run.
This year, and he doesn't have a new one. He doesn't know if he's going to get a new one. Run line picked off in the air. Sabaz, look at that speed.
Originally, Wanstead's system used a 4-3 over front, positioning the three-tech defensive tackle on the tight inside and stocking all three linebackers off the ball. In Dallas's base defense, the defensive line operated with gap responsibility. The three-tech managed the B-gap strong, while the nose tackle the A-gap weak. The end were tasked with the C-gap weak and D-gap strong. What's interesting is that Johnson and Wanstead didn't use their edge rushers as contained defenders like the majority of the league. They were spill players, which was considered a highly aggressive concept at the time. Also, because Larry Brown and Kevin Smith couldn't play bump and run coverage, Wanstead backed them off in quarters coverage. Dallas needed physical athletic safeties to make this system work. The safeties lined up at the shallow depth of just 8 to 10 yards, almost creating a 9-man front. In 1992, James Washington and Thomas Everett played near the box all season, helping form the best run defense in football. They led the league in total yards allowed and in yards per game allowed. However, if that dominant 1992 defense had a weakness, it was passing touchdowns. They were 8th in the league in passing touchdowns allowed. 16 touchdowns may not look like a lot, but compared to other defenses in the league, 16 touchdowns allowed ranked 8th in football that season. At the end of 1992, Dave Wanstead took the head coaching job in Chicago.
When the Cowboys went 1-15, I was the guy watching the film, and I got through that without Maylock. So believe me, I'm tough enough, and I'll looking forward to the challenge.
Johnson elevated Coach Butch Davis as Wanstead's replacement.
From the defensive line perspective, is the Cowboys' defensive coordinator, last year the defensive line coach, Butch Davis.
Boom, right there. You see how it got them to separate. It got the tackle to get them some width where the 3 technique could get through there, and the end gets them on different levels, okay?
Davis still had the same scheme, but he ran his scheme much differently. Davis was more aggressive in his philosophy. The league was going through a passing evolution, especially in 1993. Davis wanted more speed on the field in his passing defense without having to sacrifice talent in the front seven. Darren Woodson was a perfect fit. In 1992, Robert Jones was the starting middle linebacker. Johnson and Davis decided to bench Jones for the more faster athletic linebacker Ken Norton Jr.
Ball on the 32 of the Cowboys. Here's the blitz, and Fox is dead. 10 tackles last week in his debut as the middle linebacker in the starting role.
And what he's brought to the Dallas middle linebacker position, I think, is enthusiasm, experience, and intensity.
The move put 2 more speedy linebackers in the lineup, Dixon Edwards.
Boys can unleash. Here's the pass to Johnson out of the backfield, but putting on the clamps in a hurry was Dixon Edwards.
And Darren Smith.
Trudeau on the draw play. Potts and Darren Smith.
And he knows how to handle those problems apparently. Well, Bledsoe's pass.
Edwards, Smith, and Norton were amazing athletes, but they were still undersized. To help out with the run, Davis used Woodson as an extra defender in the box and made him a starter as a flex linebacker safety hybrid.
They pick up the blitz, a give to Garrison Hurst, and no place to go. Darren Woodson, who played collegiately here in the same stadium for Arizona State, was there to make the stop.
There was a hole there for a moment, but Darren Woodson, number 28, closed that hole very quickly. I mean, there was something good about to happen until the strong safety. But as you were mentioning, Gary, Jimmy Johnson said, hey, this guy can do everything. He's 215 pounds. He can run. He can hit. And he stopped Garrison Hurst there from what should have been at least a 5 or 6 yard gain.
You had Woodson, who ran a 4.3, Dixon a 4.4, Norton a 4.4, and Smith a 4.4. These guys at times lined up side by side. The speed was overwhelming for opposing offenses. This diversity allowed the Cowboys to play coverage in multiple formations without substituting a player.
Randall Hill goes in motion. Burline trying to screen over the middle, and Johnny Bailey this time will not get it done on third down. And because Darren Woodson, the strong safety, stayed home and fought off a blocker, made the stop, fourth down for Phoenix.
Well, you can see why Jimmy Johnson likes Darren Woodson, number 28, so much. He has him man for man. Now, he has to fight through a bunch of traffic there. I mean, there's a bunch of big bodies, but he has them all to himself. You see Leon Lett, who was blocked for a moment, but he didn't stay blocked. And that's about speed. If you get blocked, if you have speed, you still can recover.
But let's go back a little. One of the coaches who doesn't get recognition for Darren Woodson's career is the Cowboys' former head coach, Dave Campo.
If you don't know the coverage, you can't play. He said, Cloud, it was cover 2.
In 1992, Campo saw a young Darren Woodson out of Arizona working out at Pro Day. Woodson wasn't the main attraction. Campo was really there scouting out Filippo Sparks, Woodson's old teammate. Once Campo saw Woodson, he fell in love. Campo called Woodson a tweener. Woodson was a hybrid safety linebacker who ran a 4.37 in the 40. Campo said that Woodson was like a runaway bullet train. Campo met up with the Cowboys staff and told them about this fast and physical hybrid player out of Arizona State.
And Jimmy brought me into the war room and he said, tell me one more time about this Darren Woodson guy.
Well, you saw his movement. You know, you said this guy was a linebacker in college. And he's moving better than safeties and half the corners we got.
So basically, it was Campo who was the reason why Woodson was drafted. Dallas drafted Woodson as the 37th pick in the 1992 NFL Draft. Having a hybrid safety was perfect for Johnson's scheme. But in Woodson's first year, Dallas used him as a special teams ace player. Woodson was arguably the best special teams player in football. He competed as a strong safety behind James Washington.
Cowboys back to back in the half. Yeah. You got to be big to play in big games.
Yeah.
But was moved to backup free safety Thomas Everett. It wasn't until Butch Davis came that Woodson was used as a strong safety. Davis did play Woody in flex formations, especially on nickel downs. Like we said earlier, Woody played a ton of in-box formations. They used him on tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. Davis built off the defense in 1992 and turned the Cowboys' passing defense into an elite group. Darren Woodson and that unit helped lead the Cowboys to a second Super Bowl win in 2 seasons. Woody was a huge reason for the success of those defenses from 1993 to 1994. In 1994, Woody made his first Pro Bowl of his career. In 1995, Davis left for Miami and Jones promoted Dave Campo as the new defensive coordinator. Keep in mind that the year before, in 1994, Jones brought in a young, passionate defensive coordinator whose name was buzzing in both the pro and college leagues. Before coming to Dallas, Zimmer was the defensive coordinator for the Washington State Cougars. Zimmer had the 8th best defense in total yards in the nation, and the 2nd best rush defense in the nation as well. Getting Zimmer in 1994 was a major priority for the Cowboys. Zimmer was a Nichols coach in his first year. Between 1994 and 1995, Zimmer taught Woodson the complexities of the position, how to cover in the slot, how to read formations. Woodson was more polished on how teams wanted to attack him. Zimmer taught Woodson how to use his speed in controlled situations. Woodson was no longer that runaway bullet train. He was now a calculated athletic machine who was used in every passing situation.
make a move on it.
End zone, broken up. The pass intended for Ricky Pro.
As opposed to what? Pretty.
Second down and 9. Bledsoe for the end zone. The leaping attempt. Ben Coates could not get his hands on it.
Right here. One more stride. Full extension, reach out. You're talking about one of the best receiving tight ends in the business right there.
And also one of the best covered safeties, too. I mean, he is right there. Bledsoe would have to put that thing perfectly.
That's a new one.
That sounds like something would be tough to tackle.
Third down. Schrader has time. Pass is picked off.
Number 28 gets a good jump in the ball, sees it all the way, and makes the interception. It was premeditated because they said he did it and they were looking for it and it wasn't there.
Berline has it batted down. Woodson almost had his third interception of the day.
As a strong safety in base defenses, a team might place a flanker in the slots on the same side as the split end, leaving the tight end on the opposite side. In those cases, Woodson would cover the slot receiver while the cornerback took the tight end. This was different from how traditional safeties was used.
Mississippi, Pat Coleman having quite a half. Career game for him. Richardson on first down. Throws over the top of Webster Slaughter.
What this did was take away mismatching complications that a lot of defenses oftentimes go through. Under Dave Wanstead and Butch Davis, whenever an offense showed that they were running the ball, one safety would force inside the box and the other would rotate to the deep middle. Outside of Kevin Smith, Dallas didn't have lockdown cornerbacks. Brown was an exceptional zone corner who played smart in quarters coverage. As Dallas's cornerbacks couldn't press, Dallas hardly blitzed. They was not a pressure defense in terms of getting after the quarterback from the second or third levels.
And I don't think they're ever going to be a heavy blitz team because they've always been the type keep everything in front of you and don't blitz as much. Here's Butch Davis right here.
In Dallas's nickel defense, Bill Bates would come into play as the middle linebacker and Woodson would play next to him as a linebacker in zone coverage.
Dick, we've seen an awful lot of the Dallas nickel Bates defense in this first half. I'm wondering if there's going to be some change. Butch Davis, there's Bates. He's been on the field almost the entire first half here in this 4-7 alignment from the Dallas Cowboys.
He's just 205 pounds playing basically a linebacker spot. So Gant, Bates, and Woodson, three defensive backs, are the three linebackers in this alignment.
In 1995, Dallas was aggressive in free agency and signed the GOAT on a historic contract.
One of the big stories, obviously, in the NFL this weekend was the signing of Deion Sanders by the Dallas Cowboys.
The grand entrance made today at Texas Stadium. Sanders with his family after signing a 5-year, $35 million deal with an almost $13 million signing bonus.
Campo continued his quarters and zone concepts, but tweaked it slightly.
It's the best secondary in the National Football League.
And most teams that play the Cowboys do not throw any balls over here because of Deion Sanders. You can see Jacksonville not shying away from him. Had a couple chances, made a play or two over there, had a chance to go deep and missed it.
Campo played one side zone and the other side man. Prime manned one side of the field while the other side was in zone coverage.
And a quarterback, so they throw the ball to the left. That happens to be the side that the best quarterback in the National Football League plays, Deion Sanders. Everybody usually throws away from him, so he will see some action today. It's play action. They're blitzing off this side. Woodson will come up and take the back. Nobody really to throw to. Mark Grinnell with speed, just able to get the ball off, and a good tackle by Darren Woodson.
A nightmare for our technical engineers. The bright sunshine half the field.
Now, Kevin Smith was no longer the same after that horrible injury. He still was a good player, so Campo played up to the strength of his backs. But what fans who weren't knowledgeable about the work that was happening behind the scenes didn't know, Mike Zimmer was revolutionizing the Cowboys secondary under the leadership of Dave Campo as the nickel and defensive backs coach. The moment Zimmer stepped foot in Texas, Dallas' passing defense turned into the best in the league. As great as Wanstead was, Dallas only had 2 top 5 passing defenses from 1989 to 1992. In 1993, Dallas was ranked 11th in passing defense under Jimmy Johnson and Butch Davis. But when Zimmer came in 1994, they immediately made an impact in the passing game, ranking from 11th a year ago to number 1 in the league. And that was even before prime time arrived. When Campbell took over in 95, Dallas really took on a different approach. So look at this list. They were first in 1994. They were 8th in 1995, 2nd in 1996, and 1st in 1997. That's amazing. They went from having just 2 top-ranked defenses in 4 years to having 4 top-ranked passing defenses in 4 years. A major reason for this was because of Darren Woodson. Keep in mind, Campbell was the original coach who discovered Woodson. So he had a vision of Woodson that he saw before anyone else did. Once he took over, he was able to tweak Jimmy Johnson's scheme in a way that helped free up Woodson to be the player that he envisioned.
Yeah, that Darren Woodson is a heck of a player because he was, in college, he was a linebacker, so you knew he was going to play the run well and be a good tackler, and now he's a good defender. I mean, you said that was almost his 3rd interception. I mean, he is up there when you run. He's back there when you pass. He's breaking on the ball. He runs a 4.3 40. This guy is one of the real good players and one of the reasons for this #1 defense.
Woodson was one of the only defensive backs who played man in Campbell's system. Instead of checking running backs or tight ends like he did under Butch Davis, Woody checked slot wide receivers more than any time in his career. Now, I will say this. Woodson wasn't the first flex hybrid safety in NFL history. In fact, he wasn't the first hybrid in Cowboys history. The first hybrid safety in Cowboys history was the great Cornell Green. Green was a legendary cornerback in the 60s, but in his later years, Landry swapped Renfro and Green in 1970. Green would play the safety position for the rest of his career. One of the clear cases of Landry using Green as a flex player was in 1971 versus Miami in the Super Bowl. Green covered Paul Warfield in the slot for the majority of the game, but it was in 1984 where a wild man by the name of Bill Bates came and changed the league. For the first time in history, a safety was used as a middle linebacker on base downs.
Bates lines up as really almost a middle linebacker, doesn't he, in that 4-0 defense?
He lines up on the man in the backfield regardless of where the man is lining up.
4-year starter at the University of Tennessee, and seeing a lot of action for the Cowboys today in this 4-0 offense, defensive setup.
He's another great example of the computer and the stopwatch not being able to measure the true ingredient of what it takes to play something.
So yeah, Woodson was not the first flex safety. He wasn't the first safety to check receivers in the slot. He wasn't the first blitzing safety or the first to be used as a linebacker. But here's what made him an anomaly, a specimen that we've never seen before. He did everything that Bates or Green did and couldn't do. Landry couldn't use Green as a linebacker. Yes, he was a huge freak of nature, standing at 6'3" and weighing 208 pounds, but Green was late in his career, so his body couldn't stand against that physicality, especially in a brutal league like it was in the 70s. As great as Bates was, he lacked the speed to check wide receivers in the slot. Woodson was Green and Bates all in one. And trust me, that's no disrespect to the two legends that I believe should also be in the Hall of Fame. But Woody was different. He was faster than Bates and stronger than Green. There was no weakness in his game. Think about this. In his era, Woody was a top 5 safety in all athletic attributes. Top 5 in tackles, the best cover safety in the league, the best flex player, the most vicious hitter in football, the fastest safety in football. This is a guy who played fullback and linebacker in high school and rushed for 1,000 yards and 17 touchdowns and had over 100 tackles in one season. Think about this. Out of all the great safeties who played football in the National Football League, only 11 safeties in NFL history have 3 straight All-Pro selections. Leroy Butler, Willie Wood, Larry Wilson, Cliff Harris, Nolan Cromwell, Kenny Easley, Ronnie Lott, Ed Reed, Earl Thomas, Eric Berry, and Darren Woodson. But it gets even better. When focusing solely on strong safeties who spent most of their careers in that role and were named All-Pro as strong safeties, only 4 players have achieved All-Pro selections for 3 consecutive seasons or more. Darren Woodson, Kenny Easley, Leroy Butler, and Eric Berry. Easley and Butler are in the Hall of Fame, and Woodson has the same amount of Pro Bowls as Easley and has more Pro Bowls than Butler. He's by far the most decorated strong safety in NFL history. Woodson has more Super Bowls than any strong safety in NFL history. When we look at Pro Bowls and All-Pro selections, Woodson had the greatest prime stretch in the history of the NFL. In NFL history, no strong safety other than Darren Woodson has been selected to 5 consecutive Pro Bowls while also earning 3 straight All-Pro selections during those seasons. Even more impressive, before Woodson, regardless of free or strong safeties, only 2 safeties, Ronnie Lott and Cliff Harris, achieved the same 5 straight or more Pro Bowls, 3 consecutive All-Pro selections, but also won a Super Bowl. After Woodson did it, Ed Reed, Earl Thomas achieved it in their own stretches. But Ronnie Lott, Cliff Harris, and Darren Woodson were the precursors of safeties with dominant stretches that led to winning Super Bowls and championships. During Woodson's prime, Jones gave Woodson the richest contract for a safety in NFL history. I don't think that we truly understood what Woodson was doing at the time. I think we took his influence on defense for granted because of the triplets. But here's the cold truth. From 1992 to 1997, Dallas allowed the fewest points and the fewest total yards in that span. The secondary allowed the fewest passing yards in the NFL, the second fewest passing touchdowns, and the 5th lowest defensive passer rating. Woody was the main reason for that. Yet Sanders elevated the defense. Yes, he did. But Woody was the best player on the number 3 defense before Sanders ever got there. In 1994, it was Woody's defense that was 3rd in the league in points allowed. In 1995, Sanders only played 9 games. He was out for the first 7 games, but it was Woodson's defense that had the number 3 defense by the time Sanders finally joined in. In 1998, when Deion was dealing with a hamstring injury that set him on the sidelines for a lot of games, it was Woody's defense that was 3rd in the league in scoring. Same thing happened in 1999. Even though prime time was there on the field, he wasn't prime time. And any fan who watched the game at that time would tell you, Deion was at the last end of his career. Yet it was Woody's defense who was 6th in the league in points allowed. And when Woody was at the back end of his career, it was again his defense that was 3rd in the league in points allowed. Now think about this. As a starting safety, Woody played on 6 top 3 defenses in points allowed and 7 top 6 defenses in points allowed. That's 7 out of his 11 seasons as a starter in the NFL. That means that 63% of his career, he played on defenses that mattered. Since Woodson was a starter from 1993 to 2003, players have come and gone. All-time franchise greats like Haley, Bates, Norton, Kevin Smith, Larry Brown, Tolbert, Washington, Lett, Coakley, Det Wynn, Roy Williams, Terrence Newman, Deion Sanders. It doesn't matter whether they played or not, whether it was Johnson, Switzer, Gilly, Campo, or Parcells. Dallas, for 63% of that period, had elite defenses, and the number 1 common denominator was Darren Woodson. Darren Woodson was always the common denominator, and this is why he belongs in the Hall of Fame. He is arguably the most important piece of one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history. Also think about this. Out of all the players that Jerry Jones has put in the Ring of Honor, Darren Woodson was the only player who was celebrated by himself to go into that eternal shrine of honor. That's amazing to me. Hall of Fame voters, get rid of any biases that you have for the Cowboys and do what's right. It's Woody's time. Until next time, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thanks for watching.